Good afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. We've got another debate show this afternoon where we're going to be discussing who is the biggest club in League One. Got my colleagues Toby Wilding and Marcus Ally joining me this afternoon. Toby, how are you getting on?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Looking forward to this. Just hoping I don't let myself in for too much stick from any fans of clubs I've not selected here.
Absolutely. I think we're all a bit fearful of that. Marcus, how are you?
Yeah, really well. Thank you. Looking forward to maybe dispelling one of the biggest cliches in football. I think it stands out as something that you see all players say when they sign for a new club. Oh, it's a really big club, but what does it really mean? So, yeah, looking forward to the show.
Yeah, before we get into it, we're streaming across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter this afternoon. So please do get yourselves in the comments and let us know your thoughts on who League One's biggest club is. Before we go any further, I think we should have a little bit of a discussion about what defines a big club. Is it trophies, time spent in the top flight, attendances? You know, it's such an interesting debate. Toby, where do you stand on it?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things, really. As you say, I think ultimately, I guess the old cliche is fans are football or something along those lines. So I think sort of the size of a following of a club has to have a big say in that, and then also maybe the infrastructure behind the scenes. But I think you do also have to have a look at sort of what that club has done over its time. You know, how big of an impact has it made on the game in this country, or potentially even beyond that. So there's a lot of different factors to consider. But as I say, definitely a few things in there to look at, and hopefully the clubs we've selected are going to meet those criteria.
And what about you, Marcus? Where do you stand on it?
For me, you've almost got to take the club away from the current regime and who's currently operating on the board, because often that's sort of an outside investment at a lot of clubs. The four things I've got down here is stadium, academy, attendances, and then more of a broad term of just organic revenue streams. So, yeah, how self-sufficient a club can be and how that can affect the local community. But going back to Toby's original point, I think the fan base is probably the biggest sort of heading when looking to define how big a club is and yeah, the weight of that support.
Right, I've got both your three selections down in front of me, and I'm going to reveal the three of them here because they're both exactly the same. Yeah, we've got Sheffield Wednesday, Ipswich Town, and Sunderland on the agenda. So we're going to slightly tweak the debate, and we're going to rank the three of them. So ranking as Football League World TV's third biggest club in League One, we've got Ipswich Town. Founded in 1878, they won the First Division title in 1961-62, the FA Cup in 77-78, and of course the UEFA Cup in 1980-81. They play the football at Portman Road, a great stadium, holds over 30,000, and they were last in the top flight in between 2000 and 2002. Toby, I'll start with you. Why are Ipswich your pick for the third biggest club in League One?
Well, I think there's, again, as we've been saying, there's a whole combination of reasons that they are a club with, as we say, formed in 1878. So they've been around a heck of a long time by sort of any team standards. So the pedigree's there. They've been around. They've been at the very top of the English game with those titles. So yeah, they've got that. They've had success in Europe as well. I think we might come on to that a bit more in a little while. So that obviously marks them out as well, because that's such a unique achievement within any country, let alone the third tier of English football. So that's got to be something for them. I also think you look at sort of the size of the club now. Yes, it's League One, but within that, you look at sort of the squad that they've put together this season. I think that's a hugely talented one for League One as well. So when you look at sort of the investment that had to go into that, I think that has to be considered in terms of the current size of the club and what they can potentially do as, you know, sort of beyond just on the pitch as well. That sort of marks them out as well for me. So yeah, and then of course, as we've touched on, attendances, they do have one of the top followings in League One. I think, in fact, they've got the third biggest average attendance this season. So I guess that slots them in third nicely there with what we've been talking about with regards to fans and following.
Absolutely. I've got it down as an average attendance at Portman Road of around 19,500. Marcus, is that a big factor behind your decision to rank Ipswich in third?
Yeah, it's brilliant support. I think maybe one thing that could cause some questions about having them on this list is just that amount of time since they've been in the top flight in the Premier League. But, a lot of clubs have been unfortunate with the way they've been run in the EFL in the last decade or so. That's not on the main part, that's outside the control of the fans. And so you can't really downsize a club for that. I think the Academy Category 2 has had a good record in recent years as well, even with them falling down the division. So that just shows that they've got the infrastructure in place. Clearly, one of the best supported clubs in League One, and a bit of a sleeping giant after a decade of decline. I think we saw a decent patch from the Tractor Boys under Mick McCarthy before he left the club, got into the Championship playoffs at one stage. So they'll be hoping to return to that sort of former success in the next period. Obviously, you've got a lot of ambition in the club's hierarchy right now. I think they do have the third largest ground in League One, and probably the third largest average attendance going with that, even after that they've had probably a pretty below par first half of the season as well. So Ipswich for me had to be on this list, and yeah, they're well worthy of third place.
Yeah, one thing that stood out for me, just doing a little bit of background with Ipswich and looking at when they'd won their trophies, I think a First Division title, an FA Cup and a UEFA Cup, this side of World War II is a real achievement, particularly when you match it up to some of the other clubs in League One. The UEFA Cup's one thing that does really stand out from 1981. Toby, was that a big factor behind you ranking Ipswich so high?
Yeah, definitely. You look at sort of the calibre of clubs that they were up against and where they are now. It almost shows quite dramatically, as Marcus has sort of said, how tough the last few years have been when you sort of hold Ipswich up against those sort of sides they were competing against. So that sort of highlights how impressive an achievement that was for them and how highly that has to be considered. I mean, and again, as I sort of said, it's a unique thing, even within the English game, to have a European title to your name. I mean, they're almost certainly. I won't quote on this because I haven't fully checked, but I'm pretty confident. I would say, looking at the lists, that Ipswich are the only League One club who can say they've got a European trophy to their name. So that as well, that has to mark them out with regards to this list.
We've had a comment in from the EFL lover who said Ipswich 100% have to be on the list. So he's clearly in agreement with both of you. Next up, we're going to look at who's a second on the panel's list. Ranking in second, we've got Sheffield Wednesday, another founded in the 1800s, 4 First Division titles, the last one of which came in 1929 and 1930. They've got 3 FA Cups to the name, the last one coming in 1934-35. 1 League Cup, a bit more recent, from the 1991 season. Hillsborough Stadium, of course, a fantastic venue to play football at. The capacity at the minute is around 35,000. I do believe, and they were relegated from the Premier League back in 2000, which was their last appearance in the top flight. Marcus, I'll come to you first up this time. Why Sheffield Wednesday in your top 3?
Well, it does stick out like a sore thumb, the likes of Hillsborough Stadium in League One, clearly just demonstrating the size of the club itself. If it wasn't for a points deduction, they would have stayed up in the Championship last season, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So that has to throw them up into the top 3 for this one. Also, they did seem to be kicking on as one of the bigger clubs outside the top flight, finishing inside the second tier playoffs in 2015-16 and 2016-17. So even though it's been a long time away from English football's top table, it's not like they haven't flirted with getting back there. And I think some of the business that they were able to command, probably more due to the size of the club in the summer, just demonstrated the weight of and just the spectacle of playing and the attraction of playing for Sheffield Wednesday in the summer, given the calibre of player they were able to bring into the club from various destinations. So yeah, Sheffield Wednesday had to be second for me. Also in a great footballing city in Sheffield as well. One would love to see a Steel City derby in the Premier League at some point. I think that would be epic. But no, Wednesday was a no-brainer really going on this list.
A reminder to anyone joining us, get yourselves in the comments. We want to hear from you and your thoughts on who League One's biggest football club is. As I mentioned in the Ipswich segment, looking at the trophies, a lot of Sheffield Wednesday's success came before World War II, which I often look at as a bit of a sort of break in where the trophies have been won in terms of modern success and that kind of thing. Toby, does the lack of success that Sheffield Wednesday have had over the last sort of 50, 60 years, mean that they don't rank higher for you?
Maybe to some extent, but I sort of think, when you're comparing the major honours, I think that they are all a huge reason to be proud for these clubs we're discussing. And as you say, I think perhaps, I don't think there's probably any doubt that things will have changed in the post-war years. But I mean, what stands out for me with sort of those clubs who were sort of as Wednesday were, and as I think Sunderland are when we touch on them, were sort of winning those titles before then, it's still a massive achievement, and it sort of laid the groundwork and the foundations almost for sort of the football we had today. I mean, if those clubs hadn't been able to make a success at that time and develop such strong followings and build football into what it is today in this country, then we probably wouldn't have this sort of size of a sport that we do in this country, which is unique in comparison to pretty much anywhere else in the world. So I think for that reason, it does still have to be held in quite high regard, even if perhaps I don't know, I mean, obviously we weren't there, so we're working on assumptions here. Perhaps the challenge might not have been as hard in terms of the quality of the matches, but it still counts for a heck of a lot in my opinion.
A really good point there, Toby. So moving on to the average attendances, it's around 22,000 at Hillsborough this season, which ranks Sheffield Wednesday as the second best supported club this year in League One. Marcus, thoughts on that?
Yeah, not a surprise really. I expected Sheffield Wednesday to be right up there. Excuse me, in terms of attendances. Obviously, it's been a bit of a tricky relationship between Chancery and the club's fans over the last few years, leading to that points deduction, of course, seeing them struggle last season when the fans weren't able to play their part. So back in force this season, and similar to Ipswich, maybe you could argue that Sheffield Wednesday have been a little bit below par. They're sort of turning a corner in the last month or so, but that support hasn't really wavered at all, even though they haven't been able to be punching in and around the automatic promotion places like they think they should be.
We've had a comment in from Wayne. He's asking us all how we're all doing. We're all good this end. Hope you are as well, Wayne. He thinks that Sheffield Wednesday are the biggest team. He's a Fulham fan. So one question I want to put before we close the segment on Sheffield Wednesday to you both is, you don't have to go into too much detail here, but do you think that Sheffield Wednesday are the biggest club in Sheffield? Toby?
Oh, putting us on the spot there. I mean, I had a look in the running order, so I was sort of braced for this coming, and it's a tough one to call. I mean, Wednesday will say they've had the more major honours than United. United, though, will say, well, we've had more wins in the Steel City derbies, and I mean, in terms of this season, and obviously the difference in leagues, the Blades being a division higher than them might have had, well, probably does have an impact on that. It is the Blades who edge the attendance by a few thousand at the minute. So it really is incredibly tight between those two. And without trying to sit on the fence, which I probably am a bit, I'm going to say just historically with that sort of infrastructure they've got and what they can be when they get right to the very top, I'll say Wednesday maybe just edge that.
And what about you, Marcus? Which side of the fence do you sit on?
Yeah, I'm edging towards Wednesday as well. I think it's been a little bit unfortunate from just an EFL viewer perspective that we had Wednesday in the Championship for a long period while Sheffield United were in League One. Then obviously the Blades raced through the Championship. Now the roles have kind of flipped. So we've been deprived of some of those derby matches quite a lot over the last decade or so. So there would be maybe a chance to claim official bragging rights had that been a more regular occurrence in recent years. But infrastructure-wise, Hillsborough versus Bramall Lane-wise, I'd have to edge towards Sheffield United, hopefully without annoying too many Blades fans.
Yeah, let's hope you've not done that. I don't know how many are going to be picking up on the tags that we've put this live stream on, so you might have avoided any stick from the Sheffield United fans there. Right, top picks up next. Toby and Marcus have both selected Sunderland as their biggest club currently playing in League One. 140 years of history, 6 First Division titles, 2 FA Cups, including a famous win in 1973 over Leeds United. We won't go too much into detail about that. That actually won them the Sports Personality Team of the Year that year. They play the football at the Stadium of Light, an absolute epic venue up in the northeast, and their last Premier League season was 2016-17. I'll ask both of you this question. Toby, why are the Sunderland your top pick in League One?
For a few reasons, sort of what we've been looking at throughout this debate. We've been saying it's down to trophies, down to fans, down to infrastructure, and I mean, you look at Sunderland; they do seem to just top League One in pretty much every sense in that respect. I mean, trophies wise, they've won more than any other club in League One. I mean, they've joined 7th in the all-time English titles list. Only Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Everton, Villa, Manchester City have won more. So you look at the calibre of clubs there in and around there, that shows you just how much of a sleeping giant they obviously are. And then I think as well, you look at, as we've been mentioning, attendance is Sunderland's this season, 29,500. That's more than any club in the Championship. It's more than a handful of clubs in the Premier League as well. So when you consider that success historically and the size of the backing they've got now, I just think for me it was a pretty obvious one to go with Sunderland top here. And
what about you, Marcus?
Yeah, they're not only the biggest club in League One, but the biggest club in the whole of the EFL at the moment. They may well be the only Category 1 academy in League One. Just a shout out to another team that just missed out on the list. Bolton were Category 1 academy, but downgraded it to Category 3 quite recently for financial reasons. So I think that leaves the Black Cats as the only Cat 1 in the 3rd tier, which commands the respect of it. I mean, Sunderland sticks out as soon as you think any huge clubs outside the Premier League, which of course there are many, but given their even recent history, they were in the Premier League for such a long period of time. Really well supported working class club. Got to League Cup final quite recently as well. And that support hasn't wavered over a really difficult sort of 5-year period since falling out of the top flight. So it had to be Sunderland really. And I think the support and the key features that we're really hitting in the fan base and the infrastructure makes them no match for any other candidates.
No, and I think plenty of AFL fans are in agreement with both of you. The comments are absolutely filled with people, listing Sunderland as one of the biggest clubs in League One. You've sort of touched on it earlier, Toby. An average attendance is just shy of 30,000 down in League One. I mean, that's absolutely incredible support. And I know that the stadium's not full because it's such a big stadium, but 30,000 diehards turning up there week in, week out. What have you got to say about those supporters?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think it's worth remembering as well. It's in League One, and it's not just this one season they've been in League One. This is 4th season they've been down there now. So a lot longer than anyone expected, or any Sunderland fans will have felt they should have been down there for. And so to have kept going in those numbers, sort of through all that frustration of the past few years, even when there were questions, not just with Sunderland but with any team last year, would the experience of watching via a screen behind closed doors, would that change people's appetite for going back to the grounds? And nothing seems to have done that with Sunderland. So those supporters deserve a huge amount of credit for that, I think.
Yeah, it's an absolutely incredible division, League One, and some of the names that we've not mentioned. I mean, Marcus just touched on Bolton there. It just missed out on his list. We've had a comment in from Ben Harper. He would personally go with Portsmouth over Ipswich because they won 2 First Divisions and 2 FA Cups, one which was won in 2009. Ipswich haven't won anything for decades and been stuck in the lower leagues. We've had a comment in from Harry discussing your club, Charlton, Marcus. Charlton worth a mention, but not the biggest. Quick word on Charlton, Marcus?
Well, I think there are touted plans to go to Category 1 academy, which could potentially bump them up this list depending on how much weight you give to something like that. Sadly, Charlton had plans to go to 40,000 at the Valley, but couldn't afford it because we got relegated from the Premier League. So I think that's sort of written us off with this one. Another club that's been through some tough times, which is a bit of a theme of this list, which is why they're in the 3rd tier in the first place. I think I had Charlton 5th overall. I had Bolton 4th, just missing out, and then Charlton in 5th, just above Pompey. But yeah, obviously it's a completely open debate. But yeah, it's nice to shed some light on, as Toby mentioned, the amazing English football pyramid that we are so lucky to get to cover.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, it looks like we might have Derby County down in League One next season. So definitely another debate to visit in 12 months' time. All right, that concludes this afternoon's debate on Football League World TV. We've got another couple of debate shows coming up on the channel. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at the Championship's current best 11, which is going to be worth a watch. And we're also going to be discussing Derby County and potential fire sale at Pride Park in the January transfer window. Thanks to everybody that's joined us and got involved in the comments. It's been great to hear from so many of you. Thanks to Toby and Marcus for joining me as well. And take care. We'll see you again tomorrow.